Malaysia urges OIC members to assertively call for immediate ceasefire humanitarian aid to Gaza. Arab Muslim leaders reject justifying Gaza war as Israeli self-defense. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching World Today. I'm Otto Othman. Now, Malaysia wants Organization of Islamic Cooperation OIC member countries to consistently and assertively call for an immediate ceasefire and expedite humanitarian assistance to the Gaza people. Now, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said the Ummah expects tangible results and concrete action. Speaking during the 8th Extraordinary Islamic Summit of the IOC in Riyadh to discuss the ongoing Israeli aggression in Palestine, he called on IOC members to strategically employ diplomatic channels and networks in every dialogue and on every stage, be it bilateral or multilateral, regional or international. He also hoped for all Israeli settlement activity and settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank to immediately cease. The Prime Minister also called to investigate and prosecute all breaches of international law, including war crimes, through international institutions. Malaysia, according to Datuk Seri Anwar, supports the Arab Peace Initiative and negotiations with reputable mediators to advance the two-state solution with a recognition of the independent state of Palestine based on the pre-1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital. The meeting, held at the King Abdulaziz International Conference Centre, was hosted by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is also the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Meantime, the joint summit of the Arab League and OIC condemned Israeli forces' barbaric actions in Gaza, but declined to approve punitive economic and political steps against the Zionist regime over its war against Hamas. The outcome highlighted regional divisions over how to respond to the war, even as fears mount that it could draw in other countries. The final declaration rejected Israeli claims that it is acting in self-defense and demanded that the United Nations Security Council adopt a decisive and binding resolution to halt Israel's aggression. It also called for an end to weapons sales to Israel and dismissed any future political resolution to the conflict that would keep Gaza separate from the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, told the summit that he, quote-unquote, holds the occupation Israeli authorities responsible for the crimes committed against the Palestinian people.
المملكة رفضها القاطع لاستمرار العدوان والاحتلال والتهجير القسري لسكان غزة، كما تؤكد تحميل سلطات الاحتلال مسؤولية الجرائم المرتكبة بحق الشعب الفلسطيني ومقدراته. وإننا على يقين بأن السبيل الوحيد لتحقيق الأمن والسلام والاستقرار في المنطقة هو إنهاء الاحتلال والحصار والاستيطان.
While Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, on his first trip to Saudi Arabia since the two countries mended ties in March, said Islamic nations should designate the Israeli army as terrorist organization for its conduct in Gaza.
تردید دولت آمریکا آمر و شریک اصلی این جنایت است. هم ماشین جنگی رژیم صهیونیستی هم سوخت آن متعلق به امریکایی هاست. قطع هر گونه ارتباط سیاسی و اقتصادی با رژیم صهیونیستی توسط کشورهای اسلامی در این راستا تحریم تجاری علیه رژیم صهیونیستی خصوصا در حوزه انرژی باید در اولویت قرار گیرد.
Some countries, including Algeria and Lebanon, proposed responding to the devastation in Gaza by threatening to disrupt oil supplies to Israel and its allies, as well as severing the economic and diplomatic ties. However, at least 3 countries, including the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, which normalized ties with Israel in 2020, rejected the proposal. Meanwhile, thousands of displaced Palestinians looked to Gaza's largest hospital, Al-Shifa, as a safe haven. But with the Israeli strikes intensifying and the fighting reaching the gates of the compound, there seems nowhere for them to actually escape. Crowds of people have crammed into the corridors of Al-Shifa to escape the fighting in Gaza, adding to the overwhelming number of war casualties at the hospital.
والله بدي أعلق الوضع صعب جدا 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 جدا. المرضى مرميين على الأرض، المصابين مرميين على الأرض، الشهداء مرميين على الأرض. الطاقم الطبي قليل جدا، فيش علاجات، قاعدين نستنى في علاجاتنا. احنا أخوي متصاب ووضعه صعب جدا ومستنى في العلاج، قاعدين حتى الآن صار لنا تقريبا يوم كامل ما فيش علاجات نهائية، أدوية ما فيش، رباطات ما فيش، يعني عملنا حدا يساعدنا. الوضع صعب ايش أقول لك، صعب لأبعد.
The hospital director said the facility was hit repeatedly overnight in a new round of strikes that knocked out the power for several hours.
نقول للعالم أن المستشفيات محمية بالقانون الدولي الإنساني ومحمية باتفاقية جنيف الرابعة. لا أتصور أنه في القرن ال21 يتم قصف مستشفيات وتهديد مستشفيات وإخلاء مرضى. نحن لا نستطيع إخلاء مجمع شفاء طبي لأن هناك أكثر من 60 مريض في العناية المركزة وأكثر من 50 طفل في الحضانة وأقسام الخدج وأكثر من 500 مريض في أقسام غسيل الكلى. هؤلاء لا يمكن بأي حال من الأحوال أن يكون لهم مكان في قطاع غزة أو حتى في الضفة الغربية.
Speaking during a news conference, chief Israeli military spokesperson said it will help evacuate babies trapped in the hospital, adding that hospital staff had requested assistance to transfer babies to a safer hospital. Israel says doctors, patients, and thousands of evacuees who have taken refuge at hospitals in northern Gaza must leave so it can tackle Hamas gunmen who it says have placed command centers under and around them. Many of the displaced were afraid to leave the hospital, with medics, including from Doctors Without Borders, saying they saw people being shot as they attempted to flee the hospital. Separately, carrying their belongings in bags with bedding across their backs, thousands of Gazans traveled towards the south by foot, with carts pulled by horses and donkeys carrying the injured and elderly. Palestinians said an Israeli missile struck the road used by people to flee south, and Hamas-run media said 3 people were killed.
عدم الأمن في الشراح عليهم علي على الطرفين وليس علي أنا، لأنه أنا مش حاسس بالأمان. قصف فوق روسنا، نستشهد ولا نطلع إحنا وياهم. أنا دور روح بدي أوفر لنا أكل وأوفر لنا شرب، هناك مش قادر لا أوفر لنا أكل ولا أوفر لنا شرب ولا أوفر لنا.
Nearly 200,000 residents had fled south over the last 2 days as Israeli forces operate deep in Gaza City. Palestinian officials said 11,000 Gaza residents had been killed in air and artillery strikes since 7th October, around 40% of them children. In London, more than 300,000 pro-Palestinian protesters marched through central London, calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip in the largest rally to date. Protesters set off green and red flares, waved Palestinian flags, and demanded occupation no more, while a group of Jewish pro-Palestinian protesters held placards reading, "Not in our name."
What's happening is an atrocity, and I think any way that it's tried to paint in another way is terrifying, and we shouldn't be standing for it. And I think it's really important that this many people have come out today to show that we're not standing down, and a ceasefire needs to happen, and we won't rest until that happens.
Ministers had called for the cancellation of the march, with Interior Minister Suella Braverman saying protesters were hate marches.
Suella Braverman's comments have caused a lot of division, and it's a shame because, I don't know, what we're seeing here at this march is so many people being really grateful to see Jews here, loads of Jews really grateful to be part of a collective of other people. We're here trying to liberate everyone. Jewish freedom and Palestinian freedom are interrelated.
The pro-Palestinian march also drew counter-protesters from far-right groups on Armistice Day, the anniversary of the end of World War I, involving commemorations of Britain's war dead. Counter-protesters shouted at police officers, and several were arrested, with one counter-protester even being tackled to the ground as he tried to run away from officers. weeks. Luis Diaz's parents allege kidnappers arrested.
Betul ke ni? Awak yakin ke? Bila awak dengar semua ni?
RTM menerbitkan satu segmen khas tajuk Biar Betul.
Ini baru betul. Tantis Villa, semak kesahihan. Saksikan segmen Biar Betul dalam Kanta 744 setiap hari.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, police in Colombia have detained 4 people suspected in the kidnapping of father of Liverpool footballer Luis Diaz, who was held hostage for nearly 2 weeks by members of the ELN guerrilla group. Now, Luis Manuel Diaz was freed on Thursday, 12 days after being abducted by armed men on motorcycles at a gas station in the town of Baracanes near the Venezuelan border. According to the authorities, 3 of the suspects are members of a gang known as Los Primos, or alternatively, Los Primates, which handled the logistics of the kidnapping for ELN. ELN, which is in peace negotiations with the government and is party to an ongoing 6-month ceasefire, has described the kidnapping by one of its units as a mistake. 2 men with the nicknames Marlon and El Negro were arrested at dawn Saturday in the municipality of Machiao in northern Colombia. Another suspect, alias Nirancha, had been detained on 31st October in neighboring Baranchas. However, the police did not name the 4th suspect. The elder, Diaz's wife, Selenis Marulanda, was kidnapped together with him on 28th October, but was rescued hours later. In Kenya, African climate groups, youth and civic societies marched through Nairobi ahead of the 3rd meeting of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. Protesters held placards and shouted slogans calling for a reduction in plastic production.
What we're hoping for this coming week is to push leaders to not listen to the big corporations that want to continue as business as usual, but instead actual production reductions so we have a future.
The activists are a part of the global #Break Free from Plastic movement, which works to raise awareness about the dangers of plastic waste on the environment.
So we're looking for them to not just use words, but we want actual physical, tangible action to follow. We want them to say exactly what it is that their stance on the Global Plastics Treaty, and not make things optional, but binding in the Global Plastics Treaty.
The group hopes this march and other planned activities will shine a light on the plastic pollution crisis caused by manufacturers and begin the process of reducing carbon emissions from plastic production that they say exacerbates the climate crisis. Thousands of people took to the streets of the Honduran capital in anti-government protest against leftist President Xiomara Castro, angered by attempts to engineer what they say is an unconstitutional power grab. In a demonstration sponsored by opposition parties, protesters in the Central American country accused Castro government of seeking to transform Honduras by hand-picking public officials. The opposition protest was sparked after the ruling party elected a new interim chief prosecutor on 1st November without holding a congressional vote. A suspected gas explosion partially brought down a building housing asylum seekers in central Italy overnight, injuring 31 people. A video published by the fire service showed sections of the 2-story building in San Lorenzo Nuovo near Viterbo reduced to rubble after the blast, which occurred shortly before midnight. It said the building was made up of mini apartments, hosting asylum seekers, mostly men, but also women without children. A carpenter's workshop and a wine shop adjacent to the building were also destroyed. Investigations into the cause of the explosion are underway. Spanish police announced the arrest of 121 people suspected of making or distributing child pornography after a nationwide operation. A statement said 118 men and 3 women had been arrested and nearly 500 terabytes of an extremely hard nature seized.
Uno de los detenidos en Madrid acumulaba más de 2 millones de archivos con este contenido pedófilo que destaca por la gran violencia con la que se realizaban graves abusos sexuales sobre niñas de muy corta edad.
2 of the men had been placed in detention. Hundreds of people have been evacuated from their houses in the Pas-de-Calais region in northern France. Rescuers helped families collect their belongings and move to dry and safe place after heavy rains caused the river to overflow. The area remained on high alert on Saturday as local authorities warned that although rain had stopped, the risk of inundation was still high. Still to come in sports. Hubert wins his first ATP title since 2021 at Moselle Open.
Ia mempunyai bulu-bulu halus dan bila matang berwarna oranye kemerahan.
Ini dia tak cukup matang lagi.
Buah strawberry guava ni boleh dimakan secara segar ataupun tidak? Kalau boleh petik macam ni, makan terus. Boleh ke?
Biji buah melinjau. Biji berwarna hitam yang dah cukup masak ranum.
Fungsi kita gentil ni adalah untuk melembutkan kulit dan juga isinya. Membuatkan rasanya lebih manis.
Metz native Hugo Hubert delighted his hometown crowd as he marched to 6-3, 6-3 win over Alexander Shevchenko to claim the Moselle Open title. Now the result will see Hubert finish the season at a career high number 20 in the per-stone ATP rankings and as the year-end French number 1 for the first time. In a dominant and aggressive final performance, Hubert saved the only break point he faced to consolidate a late break in. Elsewhere, Adrian Manarino closed out perhaps the best ATP Tour season of his long career, with his 3rd title of the year at the Sofia Open after edging Great Britain's Jack Draper 7-6, 2-6, 6-3 to win his 5th tour-level title. In an all-lefty Sofia final, Manarino capitalized on the only 2 breakpoints he created. 1 in each set he won and battled from 15-40 in his final service game to close out the 2-hour, 17-minute match. The Frenchman broke in the very first game of the match, only to be broken right back and did not see another break chance until a huge return made it 4-2 in the final set. The dramatic opening set tiebreak saw just a single mini break when Draper missed a backhand drop shot in the net at 6-6. The Briton responded well by stepping into the court to dominate set 2, and he again fought hard after falling behind by a break in the final set. But ultimately, Manarino's experience kept the 21-year-old waiting for his first ATP Tour title. In MotoGP, reigning champion Italy's Francesco Bagnaia of Ducati seized pole position at the Malaysian Grand Prix by setting a lap record of 1 minute 57.491 seconds at Sepang, building pressure on Pramac Racing's championship contender Jorge Martin of Spain. Bagnaia put on a brilliant final lap to secure his first pole since the Catalan Grand Prix in September and beat last year's Malaysia's poleman Martin, who crashed in the final minutes of the second qualifying session. Martin, 25, looked on course to grab his 4th pole of the season and carry his flawless form from last month's Thailand Grand Prix until the Spaniard's dramatic crash at a turn 4, after which his provisional pole time of 1 minute 57.549 seconds was not enough. The 26-year-old Bagnaia, chasing his 2nd world crown, will be joined by Martin and Italian Ania Bastianini of Ducati on the front row for the afternoon sprint race and the Grand Prix today, as he looks to increase the gap to title rival Martin, who trails by 13 points in the standings with 2 further rounds remaining. Cristiano Ronaldo displayed his goal-scoring ability once again, finding the net in Al Nassr's 3-1 victory against Al Wahda in the Saudi Pro League, marking his 45th goal of the year, keeping him on track in his pursuit of 1,000 official career goals. Alex Telles was first on the board for the Knights of Nad, scoring off a spectacular free kick just 11 minutes into the match, making it the first goal for the former Manchester United defenders in the SPL. Marcelo Brozovic then set up Abdullah Al-Amri, who headed in a perfect cross to double their lead in the 40th minute. It was Ronaldo's turn at the start of the second half, with the forward taking advantage of a mistake by the Al Wahda defence to get on the board for the second consecutive match. The home team did manage an 81st minute goal with an Anselmo free kick to avoid the shutout, as Al Nassr held on to second place in the SPL standings, 4 points behind league leaders Al Hilal. Ronaldo leads the list of the top goal scorers in the Saudi Pro League with 13 goals to his name for Al Nassr, alongside 5 assists for goals from 10 matches. Former Ghana striker Rafael Domena died after suffering a heart attack during an Albanian league match between KF Agnanisha and FK Partizani on Saturday. Now, according to a statement by the Albanian Football Federation, paramedics on the pitch rushed him to hospital, where he died at the age of 28. Domena earned 8 caps for Ghana and was once considered one of the country's rising stars, but encountered several cardiac problems over the course of his career. Domena had undergone a heart operation in 2020 and had an automatic defibrillator implanted, which was intended to allow him to pursue playing football. Following this operation, the 28-year-old played in the Danish, Austrian and Swiss leagues before joining Albanian outfit KF Ignatia in January 2023. Domena was the current leading scorer in the Albanian league this season with 9 goals. Swiss club FC Zurich published a black and white photo of Domena on their website and paid homage to their former player. In memory of Domena, the Albanian Federation decided to suspend all league matches. From making a Parkinson patient walk again to sending Shakespeare to the space, your weekly roundup of offbeat stories from around the world. A long-term Parkinson's disease patient was essentially confined to his home until he became the first person to receive a new Swiss-designed implant that has dramatically improved his ability to walk. Marc Gauthier, 63, received a neuroprosthetic at Lausanne University Hospital CHUV, composed of an electrode field placed against his spinal cord. Combined with an electrical impulse generator under the skin of his abdomen, the device stimulates his spinal cord to activate his leg muscles so he could walk normally again. Dave Marver, Chief Executive Officer of Onward Medical, which designed the implant, said while the device was similar to implantable defibrillators and devices used for pain management, it was unique in its ability to target the spinal cord in a specific and flexible way.
Our device has very specific and special ways, unique ways of delivering stimulation to the spinal cord. That's what makes it different. So for the healthcare system, it will look and feel familiar, but it will offer therapy that doesn't exist today.
The company expects to commercialize the device for use for patients of other diseases by 2026, with usage specific to Parkinson's to follow after. The King and Queen unveiled statues of the late Queen Elizabeth II and Duke of Edinburgh as they arrived for the Royal British Legion Festival of Remembrance in the Royal Albert Hall. The life-size bronze artworks commemorating the former Queen and her husband's dedication to the concert hall were installed as part of its 150th anniversary. It was very emotional for King Charles as he looked up at the statue of his late mother. Charles and Camilla were later accompanied at the festival by 9 other members of the royal family. The Princess Royal led a tribute to those who lost their lives in the Battle of the Atlantic, the longest military campaign of the Second World War. This year's Festival of Remembrance marked 80 years since the battle, which saw around 65,000 seamen lost their lives. November 8th marks 400 years since the first volume of playwright William Shakespeare's works was published. Shakespeare's first folio was compiled by his friends and published on 8th November 1623, 7 years after his death. Some 750 copies were believed to have been printed, containing 36 of the 37 plays Shakespeare wrote, arranged for the first time as comedies, tragedies, and histories. The first folio is considered as one of the most important books in English literature. Without it, 18 plays, including Macbeth, would have been lost. To mark the anniversary, filmmaker Jack Jewers sent a portrait of Shakespeare and a copy of a speech from A Midsummer Night's Dream to the edge of space in a short film. In Lovers and Madmen, narrated by actor Tom Baker, he attached the portrait and text to a weather balloon, sending them to the Earth's upper atmosphere.
The image of Shakespeare atop the world, I mean, come on, that is a literal metaphor, right? For Shakespeare being the world's dramatist. There was a little copy of the speech, a tiny copy of the speech we used, which is the Lovers and Madmen speech from Midsummer Night's Dream, inserted into the portrait. I like the idea of Shakespeare's words floating in space along with his image.
Well, that concludes this edition of World Today. In our top story, Malaysia urges OIC members to assertively call for immediate ceasefire humanitarian aid to Gaza. Now, tune into Malaysia Tonight coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm Otto Othman. Thank you for watching.